The Debt Management Office has revealed that Nigeria's total debt stock has increased to 44 trillion naira as of September 2022. The 44 trillion naira debt comprises of domestic and external borrowings of the federal government, the 36 states, and the Federal Capital Territory. This latest figure shows that between July and September, Nigeria's debt stock increased by 1.2 billion naira when compared to the 43 trillion naira recorded in June 2022. The report further disclosed that the country spent 1.2 trillion naira on debt servicing between July and September. Recently, the World Bank, in its international debt report, said that Nigeria spent $9.6 billion to service foreign debts in 12 years, from 2010 to 2021, adding that the nation's debt stock is not reflected in its economy. Joining us via Zoom is an economist, Professor Ken Ife. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Professor.
Right.
Hi, morning.
Now, one would say that the many other countries we see borrow monies to service their economy, do whatever it is, much more than even Nigeria is doing. But a lot of concerns with how much it is as it is now, 44 trillion naira as it is reported by the Debt Management Office. I'm wondering what concerns you have with regards to this figure, and how did we even get to this point in the first place?
Well, we have to get to this point and probably actually go higher because we're still going to borrow, because we don't have national savings to take, and secondly, we are being hostage to all kinds of financial requirements. For example, if you consider that 500 billion naira every month has to be found or borrowed to be able to pay for petroleum subsidy, then you really cannot see the end of this in sight. But that is not such a hopeless situation, actually. Even the same World Bank that warned and raised alarm that the debt is becoming unsustainable still feels that it's only our vulnerability that has increased. And this not, on the quantum of it, still feel that we are 23%, far less than 40. But the reality is that the repayment, the service repayment of the debt service is just getting out of hand. It's about 100% now, projected to be 100% by the end of the year, which is really a matter of a few weeks. And then next year, 2023, they project that it could be as high as 123% of our revenue. But these are just projections because revenues improve towards the end of the year. So, you might see a little bit less than what has been predicted.
All right, Professor, I wonder, the US has a debt profile of over $30 trillion, and then the UK, on the other hand, has over 2 trillion pounds. And if you compare that with Nigeria in the quantity of it, one would say, of course, that's very, very, very high, even higher than what Nigeria has. But what's the difference between the debt profile of those countries that are higher than Nigeria and the one that we have in here?
Well, there's a fundamental difference between Nigeria's debt or even Japanese debt that is over 200%. And Nigeria, the thing is that America is never going to pay its debt. When it comes to the war, they just print more dollars, and this is because 60% of world debt is denominated in dollars, and the structure of this debt is such that we have to sweat these other economies to export a lot more to earn dollars and reduce their debt. But America doesn't have to pay all those debts as on the face of it. But that explains why the likes of China and Russia are agitated. They want to move away from the dollar, and then just use gold and some precious metals and go back again to tangible things that they can lay their hands on. And that's the trend on that side of the world.
So how sustainable?
But we have to live.
Right.
We have to live with having to pay our debt, and unfortunately, we are not winning that war right now. But there is hope, and maybe when we come to solutions, then we can see what solutions are feasible.
What is this hope? Because there are questions of how sustainable is Nigeria's debt profile? What is this hope that you are looking at? Because recently, the finance minister was saying that we do not need debt relief. So I'm wondering what this hope you are speaking of is.
No, the thing is, I think the minister is right, actually. It's not the debt relief that she was looking for when she went to US. Is about the possibility of restructuring some of these debts so that we could have ones that have longer term horizon rather than the short instruments. So that's one, of course. But the real hope is, if you notice that even World Bank in their report is really saying that taking out more and more loans is not an answer. The reality is this. Our debt, first of all, we have to increase revenue. Whatever you say, whatever you do, at 7% of the GDP, we're the lowest in Africa. The government, Ministry of Finance, has an aggressive program to raise revenue. How far they have gone, you could see some incremental improvement. But why they are struggling to widen the tax base, bring in more automation, change the goods and services in such a way that we can generate more revenue from different modes, mode 1, mode 2, mode 3. Why all those are using Finance Act every year to roughen the edges and then smoothing the edges and get more into the tax? Why they are doing all that, you get the likes of NNPT throwing more spanner in the works by pushing us more and more into debt, and even complicating the matter by doing the accrued swap, which denies the system the dollars that we need to help to be able to counter some of these. For example, 79% of our forex comes from crude. 10% of our forex comes from gas. Both of them are 90%. So whatever you find is only about 10% diaspora remittance. Thank God it has increased again to just over $20 billion. Then you have FDI that is really, really struggling. You have portfolio investment that has vaporized away because of the negative real interest rate. If your MPR is 15.5%, that's actually the benchmark from where the banks begin to raise their lending rates. And then, of course, you should expect instruments that actually pay you above 15.5% so that you can actually have a profit in the end of the day. Otherwise, what happens is that if you invest here, then the inflation eats it up. By the time you come back in 12 months' time to collect your saving, your investment, the inflation the real value has gone down. So that's what we mean by negative real interest rate. But then you can see the raising of the treasury bills are going up to 14.8%. So trying to catch up with the base rate, the NPR, the CBN NPR rates, just to see if they can encourage people to. But even then, they still get oversubscribed because people don't have much options at the current wave of. So how do we deal with this? One of the ways of dealing with this is to ramp up revenue, which is what I've been talking about. The second one is to actually, restructure the debt, which the government is committed to doing. But the real one that actually takes us out of this, especially for now, is to look at the type of borrowing that we have been borrowing, which is, is debt. Debt financing is what we have been doing all along. And but we have not succeeded much on asset-based financing. If you look at the budget for next year, government expects 205 billion naira from privatization proceeds, but that's quite a small money compared to the huge amount outstanding. So we said, what is it that we can do? And we try to borrow a leaf from what some other economies, much, much stronger than Nigerian economy, has done. You know how many times Saudi Arabia is richer than Nigeria. They needed about $25 billion They didn't want to go to talk to any multilateral lender. They just singled out a company they own, which is Saudi Aramco, and said, I want to see the value of this. And they were giving a value of 1.5 trillion. I said, okay, take it to the capital market and just, sell 5%. And that's it. That gave them the money that they needed. And then what happens is people still don't want to listen to this. When a company goes to the capital market, the searchlight is on that company. Corporate governance gets to the highest. So big boys enter into the fray. Citizens enter into the fray. They began to demand more transparency, more accountability. And look at what happened. Within 2 years, that Saudi Aramco's capitalization, not their valuation, went up to 2.3 trillion. Just within 2 years. It shows more confidence in the business, and it's the highest capitalized company in the world. And so we say our biggest asset in Nigeria is our NNPC. We say, okay, if the value they put on it is $100 billion, all right, that's fine. Let's work with it. But let's get a proper valuation. But in any case, if you just take 10% of that to the capital market, you get a higher degree of transparency with the whatever they do. There will be more focus on it. Otherwise, explain to me why NLNG, which is owned by Nigerian government and a few oil companies, is giving us profit. They're paying dividend. But here you have the reverse, where they are sinking the economy. So if you do that, not only that you will release $10 billion, 10% of their valuation, by getting Nigerians to buy those shares. Let everybody buy. The militants should buy. The labor people that are threatening hell and fire and brimstone, they will also buy shares. And so we have more accountability. We have more ownership. And then the militancy would actually take a break because they wouldn't want to invest where they're expecting regular revenue every year, dividend, and then they allow them to be bastardized. Right? So you will see a different investment climate. And that would immediately reduce the pressure that we're having. Because if you can get in $10 billion now, look at how much it means in terms of naira. You're talking about trillions of naira. You're talking about $10 billion removing, taking it off of our external borrowing and the domestic borrowing. So there is a lot of mileage, and we can actually breathe life into our financial equation. I think that is one thing that we should do to get more ownership of our asset by the Nigerians, and then give us more money. And some of the dollars abroad will also find their way into the system.
All right, Professor, it's good the picture you've painted for us to see the way forward from listing some of these public companies on the stock exchange so monies can be raised and also create transparency. Now, let's go back to I'd like you to talk to us from the window of production. We recall in Nigeria in the 70s and early 80s where the value of the Nigerian naira was so strong that, in fact, we read that Nigeria used to lend monies to other countries and even to IMF at the time, maybe sometime in the 60s or 70s. And at that time, there were so many companies in Nigeria, either Nigeria owned or foreign, but they were all here. All of the Volkswagens were here, the Peugeot, a lot of those companies were here. But now we don't have that anymore. So if we are talking about the issue of production, how do we begin to go back into that level where Nigeria has to produce to be able to earn foreign currency enough to be self-sufficient?
Yeah, it's a catch-22 situation. I was giving you the financial breakdown, the revenue, the external revenue breakdown. Now, Central Bank expects $3 billion every month from NNPC. And Central Bank itself has to disburse $1.9 billion $1.8 billion every month on import. They need to do that. But what they get from NNPC, the whole of last year, they didn't get anything. They get anything around 300 million, which is 10% of what they should be getting from NNPC. Now, how do you expect somebody getting 300 million to be able to finance $1.8 billion import bill? How do you expect that? Is he going to start printing dollars here? So, so in any pricing mechanism, you have to look at demand and supply. We need to export more, without a doubt. We need to ensure that whatever proceed we have enters into the fray, and of course, it gets dispersed. Some of it gets dispersed. They dispersed in what? Dispersed in petroleum, import of petroleum products. And that takes us straight into the whole shenanigan going on in the oil industry. You have 4 refineries that are moribund. You are paying salaries for workers who are not doing anything, and you are not giving. Okay, you're going to service the thing with over $1 billion. Look, you don't need more than $100 million for a 20,000 barrels a day. 1 billion naira will give you 10 modular refineries. It's easier to maintain modular refineries. You can spread them one in each state area. You can do, it's very, very easy, and they can do 20 times 10, 200,000 barrels. So you have 10 times more chance of having petrol running than depending on a very, very old refinery that has outlived its shelf life. Now, I know there was a time when Dangote paid $650 million for 2 of these refineries. If we can get that money, look, I would jump to the roof. Find people to buy these companies, or collocate collocate their own refineries within the boundaries of these refineries. Get these modular so that we can breathe life into our economy and stop wasting our foreign exchange. We are the only country that I know in this oil league that is not benefiting from this opportunity of very high prices. So I think we're going to have to rethink this. Fortunately, we thank God that the president has passed PIA, and PIA has, bodes well for the future in terms of the future of the oil industry. We have hydrocarbon tax, where 30% of that money, Frontier Basin Investment Fund, where 30% of that money goes. What that means in effect is that rather than all other people in the world not investing in prospecting, Nigeria has money to invest in prospecting. So we have actually tied up that end and settled that value chain. But we still haven't sorted out what is going on with NNPC. NNPC obviously has 10% of this money, and then they may not be enough for them. Government promised that they're going to help take away some of their debt, retire some of these debts, or do something about the debt. But the debt overhang on the NNPC is such that they have to survive. So they are the sole importer, sole exporter of this crude and PMS. So obviously they will load their administrative costs and their running costs, will load it all on that transaction. And then you cannot see there's a lack of transparency in merging these two. You merging the accounting framework for supply of export of crude, and merging it with the accounting framework for buying PMS. You put the two together in one. It doesn't work like that. Give us the money for selling the crude, and then take the money for supplying us that. Because if, for example, you are losing 20% of your revenue through issues around the crude, the quantity of crude supplied, or quantity of, you don't know, then you come and add another 20% loss in what exactly is what we are consuming in PMS. Well, we may be consuming less by 20%. So 20 plus 20 is 40%. You've bundled this, the kind of accounting you are doing bundles these two things, and you're losing 40% of your revenue. So they have to decouple that, and I've said that to the minister. We have to decouple these two things, and then even if it means breaking the monopoly, then we'll do that just to make sure. So there's a lot of mileage, and then of course there's another support that you will get if this company heads to the capital market. First of all the lending frameworks will be coming to give you money. For example, just the mere fact that we're implementing PIA Act, or now is a law. Afrexim Bank gave a loan of $5 billion to NNPC. I bet you that they will even give more. They could even give $10 billion to NNPC, because there's confidence that it is improving in its corporate management. There is confidence that it is becoming embedded in the ownership of all Nigerians. So all of those confidence and all the commercial confidence, technical confidence, will make them lend more money to the and it will not appear on Nigeria's balance sheet, which is very important. So when you deal with the assets, all those assets, they don't actually appear in government balance sheet. So it helps for us to start looking at all of these options.
All right. Now, there are experts who think that perhaps it's high time Nigeria should stop borrowing and begin to look inwards, like you have rightly mentioned, because of the far-reaching implication of this borrowing on the future generation and the future of the country. Perhaps you can just speak to the matter of the implication of this, our borrowing, and its implications on our future as a country and future generation.
Well, it's easier said than done. They stop borrowing, stop borrowing. Look, there's nothing you would, look at the model. The model is this: you have to invest. An investment creates productive activity. That productive activity creates employment. The employment pays the worker. The worker now lives and have sustainable, have a surplus. And that surplus is what the worker uses to pay for education, pay for health, pay for... so it's a circle. Even if you want to fight corruption, you still need investment to fight corruption. Because if you need new computer systems and then get more people involved, you have to pay money. There's nothing you want to do that can be done free. And even if you want to restructure and reduce the number of MDAs and all of that, you still need money to do that. You have to invest to be able to restructure. So you cannot escape that. And if you don't have the money as a savings in the national savings, then you have to go a borrowing. And whoever goes a borrowing goes a sorry. So that's the simple truth. So we can't run away from that equation that you're going to have to borrow. Are you going to say to security, defense community, oh, sorry, we can't buy equipment, we can't buy you the equipment you critically need to fight insurgency because we don't want to borrow money? Or are you going to say to workers that we are now having to borrow to pay salaries, oh, I'm sorry, we can't pay your salaries because we don't want to borrow? So, it's an intractable solution. So that's why you have to look at the solution. Look at the option. We have to breathe. Look, before the PIA was passed, earlier on, we were told that, oh, the NNPC's debt is about 1.2 trillion. And then I remember that there was one government partial solution that said, distribute 5,000 naira to about 20 to 40 million people. And then I said, no, you can't do that. And eventually we ran out of that. And then by the time we now go into NEC meeting to look at all this whole matter, because this is a matter for the National Federation account. So we have to go there. And when we got there, it's no longer 1.2 trillion we're talking about. It jumped to 5 trillion. So the reality began to set in when the PIA kicked in, because you now saw the narrowing of the revenue base, not the expenditure base of this, and then they're beginning to hemorrhage the revenue by so that became alarmist, because for you to now begin to look for 500 billion every year, every month, which is borrowing. The money is not anywhere. You have to go and borrow that money simply because you want to satisfy the appetite for subsidy. It's crazy. So we have to, however tough it is as a decision, we have to take that decision on alternative revenue. We have to take that decision on the asset. What the hell? This asset belongs to you and me. And so why wouldn't you put it on the line so that you can reduce the quantum and then make the institution work harder? Because when the institution borrows, the people they borrowed from multilateral development agencies, they will all be looking to ensure that the borrowing plan they gave them, that they are following it. And then, so that's what you have more eyes on what is going on. You have more level of transparency, more accountability, more ownership of the problem that we are facing. Just look at, just in the last few months, what has happened in Niger Delta. Some of the indigenous came up and said, look, we're going to start busting these things. And then you saw how many of these attacks on our line have been stopped. You've seen all the other stations that they were using. So all of these are because the people are saying, look, we are just going down surreptitiously.
All right,
so
Professor.
We have to fight.
Yeah, all right, Professor, because of time, let me ask you this before we go. Now, the CBN, we see the CBN is coming up with new measures, especially when it comes to the issue of redesigning the naira and then introducing the cashless policy, trying to take it up a notch higher, and all of that. Now, talk to us from the complaint of the CBN saying there's excess liquidity in the system, where it talks about the Nigerian currency, almost about over 80% of the Nigerian currency is on the streets, it's in the people's pockets, it's out of the system. How does that compound the situation that we're talking about?
Okay, look, when CBN says that 3.3 trillion naira is what they have printed and are supposed to be in circulation, that 80% of that, 63, it's just not to be found within the lending. So what should immediately strike you is that the possibility of lending 2.6 trillion to economic activities, to create employment, is gone, because these monies are hiding under the pillow of some people or inside their sink or in the tank, overhead tank. That money is sucked out of the system. So how do you expect the banks to lend? And then secondly, when the monetary policy is designed in such a way that the transmission of it, the transmission belt, includes going to the banking sector, raising, you know what they call open market operation? So the CBN has its own mechanism for mopping up liquidity and all that, but it's only attacking about 20% of it within its transmission belt. So they've got to do something. And thirdly, there is a high incidence of counterfeiting going on. So the volume of money you think is out there may well be double when you start looking at the fake currencies that are actually also in circulation. And quite unfortunately, all of those that are there in circulation are chasing fewer goods and services, which is just a classic definition of inflation. You have fake money plus laundered money plus name it. They're all chasing few goods and services. That is inflation. And so then you now have also bandits that demand this cash from you, 100 million, 200 million, because they believe you can just bring this cash. And then when they now see that the new guideline makes it difficult for you to bring out more than 100,000 naira, then they'll have to begin to rethink. Maybe they now have to use dollars for those who have dollars. We don't know. But I think we need to give it a chance. Everybody agrees that these measures are important for our economy. And so we need to give it a chance.
We have to leave the conversation here now.
If your limit
Professor Ken Ife, can you hear me?
100,000. Yeah.
We have to leave the conversation here now. Our time is up, unfortunately. But we must thank you, Economist, Professor Ken Ife, for your time on the program.
Thank you very much.